الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأصلي وأسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. On the authority of Abdullah ibn Busr, may Allah be pleased with him, that a man said to the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام.
وعن عبد الله بن بصر رضي الله عنه أن رجلا قال: يا رسول الله، إن شرائع الإسلام قد كثرت علي، فأخبرني بشيء أتشبث به. قال: لا يزال لسانك رطبا من ذكر الله.
O Prophet of Allah, the rights of Islam are much for me. So tell me of something that I might hold fast to. What does it mean that the rights of Islam are much for him? He doesn't want to pray? No. The man is referring to voluntary acts like night prayer, fasting, voluntary fast, giving charity. He knows the pillars of Islam and there is no compromise in any of that. But what he's asking about is something to sum everything else up. So the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam, let not your tongue cease from the remembrance of Allah. Now this is the English translation. In Arabic, let your tongue be moist with the remembrance of Allah. And this is much more beautiful. Though maybe the English speakers would not say moist. It's always moist. There's saliva in it. So, no, what was meant is that when you make dhikr, this is making your tongue moist. In the sense that if you don't make dhikr, it becomes like a barren land that needs water, that needs rain, that needs cultivation. But when you have your tongue moist by the dhikr of Allah, and how is that possible? There's no problem in that. I remember when I used to talk to Sheikh bin Baz like 30 years plus ago on the phone, he had 2 landlines. So when his assistant picked up the first line and the Sheikh was answering a caller, the second line rang, he picked it up, the assistant, and he says, hold on for a second. I used to hear the Sheikh answering the call, and after he hangs up, by the time the assistant gives him the second headset, I can hear the Sheikh saying, Wallahi, all the time, this is not once, every single time. He said, Subhanallah, Astaghfirullah, Allah Akbar, La ilaha illallah. Ya Sheikh, you just finished the caller and now you're taking another caller. But he's always 24/7 remembering Allah. And the guy is dead. So he's not going to give me a penny for praising him like that. That and Allah Azza wa Jal is the protector, and Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who's holding him to account. Allahu hasibuh. But this shows you how when dhikr becomes in your blood, when your tongue becomes moist with the remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal, you would be a different person. Compare this to our youngsters, who all what they think of is music, lyrics, hip-hop, rap. And I've seen some of the youngsters memorizing rap songs and repeating the lyrics. And if you ask them, can you recite Ayat al-Kursi for me? Say, huh? They would not be able to do this. So this is one of the downfalls that we have to look after, inshaAllah Azza wa Jal. Now, the following hadith, the Prophet says, alayhi salatu wasalam,
وقال صلى الله عليه وسلم: من قرأ حرفا من كتاب الله فله به حسنة، والحسنة بعشر أمثالها، لا أقول ألف لام ميم حرف، ولكن ألف حرف ولام حرف وميم حرف.
The Prophet says, alayhi salatu wasalam, whoever recites a letter of Allah's book has for it a merit, and 10 more like it. Not to say that alif, lam, mim are one letter, but rather alif is a letter, lam is a letter, and mim is a letter. Now, this hadith shows you the abundance of Allah's great rewards for remembering Allah, specifically for reciting the Quran. The Prophet tells us that Allah Azza wa Jal rewards those whoever do such a thing, that with each letter Allah gives them one good deed, one hasana. And this hasana is multiplied tenfolds. And another hadith up to 700 folds, and another hadith up to whatever Allah pleases Azza wa Jal. So, just so that there won't be any confusion, the Prophet ﷺ elaborated. He said, watch out. I don't say Alif Lam Mim, which is the beginning of like Surah Al-Baqarah, for example, is one letter. Alif is a single letter, Lam is a single letter, Mim is a single letter. Which means that this is literal, that Allah Azza wa Jal gives reward without any account for those who remember Him, for those who read the Quran. And of course we know that the Quran is the word of Allah the Almighty, which is not created, and that it is made of letters and sounds that we hear and that we recite. And it also shows you how great the reward of Allah Azza wa Jal is. Now, having said that, it's important to know that the more Muslims are engaged with their book, that is the Quran, the better humans they are, the closer to Allah they are, the greater their rewards with Allah is, and the better quality of life with lots of blessing in it they would have. And again, we find that the Muslims have abandoned the Quran, left it behind them, neglected it. They took up constitutions, they took up worldly laws and ideologies, rather than accepting the Quran to be the word of Allah and to be their guide to the paradise of Allah Azza wa Jal. The more we're distant from the Quran, the more Allah humiliates us and makes us weaker and more vulnerable to enemies' attacks. But the more we are closer to the Quran, the better people we are, the better Muslims we are. And this is why the enemies of Islam try their level best to segregate us, to keep us as far as possible from the Quran and preoccupy us with anything else other than the Quran. I pray to Allah that He makes the Quran the spring of our hearts and to expand our chest with it, and He is capable of doing that. Ameen. With this we come to the conclusion of today's episode. Until we meet next time, I leave you fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب